"That's possible," said Olga. "But in that case, it's even worse, for that means that the official's business is so important that the papers are too precious or too numerous to be taken with him. And those officials go at a gallop. None of them can spare time for father. And besides, there are several roads to the castle. Now, one of them is in fashion, and most carriages go by that. Now it's another, and everything drives pell-mell there. And what governs this change of fashion has never yet been found out. At 8 o'clock one morning, they'll all be on another road, 10 minutes later on a third, and half an hour after that on the first road again. And then they may stick to that road all day. But every minute there's the possibility of a change. Of course, all the roads join up near the village. But by that time all the carriages are racing like mad, while near the castle the pace isn't quite so fast. And the amount of traffic varies just as widely and incomprehensibly as the choice of roads. There are often days when there's not a carriage to be seen, and others when they travel in crowds. Now, just think of all that in relation to father. In his best suit, which soon becomes his only suit, off he goes every morning from the house with our best wishes. He takes with him a small fire brigade badge, which he has really no business to keep, to stick in his coat once he's out of the village. For in the village itself, he's afraid to let it be seen, although it's so small that it can hardly be seen 2 paces away. But father insists that it's just the thing to draw a passing official's attention. Not far from the castle entrance there's a market garden belonging to a man called Bertuk, who sells vegetables to the castle. And there, on the narrow stone ledge at the foot of the garden fence, father took up his post. Bertuk made no objection, because he used to be very friendly with father and had been one of his most faithful customers. You see, he has a lame foot, and he thought that nobody but father could make him a boot to fit. Well, there sat father, day after day. It was a wet and stormy autumn, but the weather meant nothing to him. In the morning, at his regular hour, he had his hand on the latch and waved us goodbye. In the evening, he came back, soaked to the skin. Every day it seemed a little more bent, and flung himself down in a corner. At first, he used to tell us all his little adventures, such as how Bertuk, for sympathy and old friendship's sake, had thrown him a blanket over the fence, or that in one of the passing carriages he thought he had recognized this or the other official, or that this or the other coachman had recognized him again, and playfully flicked him with his whip. But later, he stopped telling us these things. Evidently, he had given up all hope of ever achieving anything there, and looked on it only as his duty, his dreary job, to go there and spend the whole day. That was when his rheumatic pains began. Winter was coming on, snow fell early. The winter begins very early here. Well, so there he sat, sometimes on wet stones and at other times in the snow. In the night he groaned with pain, and in the morning he was many a time uncertain whether to go or not, but always overcame his reluctance and went. Mother clung to him and didn't want to let him go. So he, apparently grown timid because his limbs wouldn't obey him, allowed her to go with him. And so Mother began to get pains too. We often went out to them to take them food or merely to visit them, or to try to persuade them to come back home. How often we found them crouching together, leaning against each other on their narrow seat, huddled up under a thin blanket which scarcely covered them. And round about them nothing but the grey of snow and mist, and far and wide for days at a time not a soul to be seen, not a carriage. A sight that was, Kay, a sight to be seen. Until one morning, Father couldn't move his stiff legs out of bed at all. He wasn't to be comforted. In a slight delirium, he thought he could see an official stopping his carriage beside Bertuk just at that moment, hunting all along the fence for him, and then climbing angrily into his carriage again with a shake of his head. At that, Father shrieked so loudly that it was as if he wanted to make the official hear him at all that distance, and to explain how blameless his absence was. And it became a long absence. He never went back again, and for weeks he never left his bed. Amalia took over the nursing, the attending, the treatment, did everything he needed, and with a few intervals has kept it up to this day. She knows healing herbs to soothe his pain. She needs hardly any sleep. She's never alarmed, never afraid, never impatient. She does everything for the old folks. While we were fluttering round uneasily, without being able to help in anything, she remained cool and quiet, whatever happened. Then, when the worst was past, and Father was able to struggle cautiously out of bed, with one of us supporting him on each side, Amalia withdrew into the background again and left him to us.